Hey, thank you to those who are here live with us on Zoom. This is Eridania, once again with a few of my coworkers from Dignity of Children, hosting another wonderful Uplift event. Today's special guest is Stephanie Ziev. She will be leading all of us on an interactive session so that we can all learn how to change our challenges into choices in order to be able to lead and live lives with more ease, impact, joy, and freedom. Who doesn't want that? Especially in these challenging times. So I am very excited that Stephanie is here with us today. For those that don't know much about Stephanie, I think you may find it interesting to know that she is a former TV executive turned certified live and executive coach. She's also the host of the Permission to Choose podcast. And so I invite you to visit her website and definitely listen to some of the wonderful interviews that she has done with visionaries and leaders who are doing incredible work out there in the world. I'm sure at least one of those several interviews on her website will inspire you to do the same. So, without further ado, I would like Stephanie to jump in and say hi to all of you and lead us to change. Hi, Steph.
Hi. Thank you for that. That was so nice. You're so nice to me. I like you. You're my friend. I'm grateful to be part of this. Thank you for the invitation, and especially given the fact that we are living in these challenging times, I thought this would probably be a good topic to support, right? It's first I just want to acknowledge the challenging times in which we're living, and I want to acknowledge the pain and suffering of so many. And I stand with you, and I'm sorry and saddened about what's going on. And I don't mean to make light of this kind of catchy topic, right? To just change your challenge to choice, like it's so easy, right? um and my intention here is to support all of us to kind of be much more conscious around the way in which we're taking care of ourselves in the way that we're also relating to things as well. This is not about like eradicating challenge, right? This is about just helping us to shape shift some of our stories so that there is more ease and just some grace around what we can about how we can be with ourselves and others, even in the midst of what is happening. So with that, let me just ask you guys if you'd be willing to put in the chat or on the on in the comments on the Facebook, just can you just write down one word about how you are feeling in this moment? So anything. It can be, and as real as you can be, the more real, the better, the more vulnerable, the better. So just to, what's up for you right now? Hungry. Okay. That's really authentic. Thank you. Sharika. Is that how I say it? Yeah. That's awesome. Hungry. What else? Hungry for just food, or is there hungry? Is there another hunger in you? Stomach aches a bit, exhausted, overwhelmed, sensitive. Yes. Awesome. I would say at the moment I am a little anxious. So, oh, and Ellen is too. So there you go. So, okay. And so I think that it's important for us to name where we are, right? Because I mean, like so much, we cannot change anything unless we name it. So let's turn to what is up for us internally and also externally, because that's really the place from which we can only shift what's here, not what's out. We, and when we shift what's here, that's when we have the power to impact what's out there. So with that, let me share my screen with you and go to, I always almost end the meeting when I do this sometimes. Anyone else do that? Uh, okay. All right. So this whole thing is about change or challenge to choice, as Eridania so beautifully said, to create more ease, impact, joy, and freedom. And that is really that's it. That's the bottom line. So my intentions for the workshop today is to help you make is to first help you make your choices more conscious and your challenges less powerful. I'd like you to walk away feeling a little lighter, feeling like you do have some agency over the challenges, and that comes from how you're choosing to relate to those and choose around that, right? So that's one thing. And the next thing, I'd like you to empower, I want to empower you to take personal responsibility so that you can feel more inspired and guided to make better, healthier choices at work and at home. Okay. So personal responsibility. Anyone have a sense about like what does responsibility mean to you? What comes up for you when you hear that? Anyone in the chat want to share or comment? Personal responsibility, immediate thoughts around that. And I'm open if you guys don't just want to put that in the chat, but if you want to share it out loud as
I
well.
share responsibility to be informed about what's going on in the political environment in
Okay.
today's.
Okay. Okay, great. And what else comes up for you around personal responsibility? Anyone else? Anyone have like an adverse effect to it? Like, screw that, I don't want to be responsible. Anybody? So personal responsibility, the way I look at that, I mean, this is something that we'll go into, but it's kind of the ability to respond, kind of versus react, right? So that's how I'm presenting it here. The next intention is to name and change your old story that sucks. And when I say that, I mean, it might suck energy, it might suck time, and anything else that's holding you back, right? It could just generally suck, any of these stories that you're telling yourself consciously or unconsciously. And then the opportunity is to choose new stories that serve, okay? New stories that free you, that light you up, that are more consciously authored by you, okay? And then my final is I want to provide user-friendly tools to support you in this so that we're actually, this is something that you can pocket and take with you. So this is really applicable. It's really implementable. It's something that you guys get to use in the world, practice. This is not going to be something that shifts in a second, although you might have a shift in a second. But the intent here is to provide you this user-friendly tool or tools to support you with practicing all of this. Okay, good. Questions, thoughts, comments yet? Are we all on board for this? Okay, awesome. All right. So, well, these are my reflection questions for you before we kind of dive in even further. I want you to just take a minute. I'm going to have like a moment of pause. And I want you to think about what is your current biggest challenge right now? And we can have a little interaction around it if you'd like. But I also think that there's something poignant about taking a moment, which I don't know how often anyone give themselves a moment to reflect these days. Are anybody really taking care of themselves in that way to actually take a breath and think and reflect and take some conscious time for yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And tell me, in what way are you, what are you doing in that way?
Just doing breath work is really imperative for me. Um, Finding time in my busy schedule to journal, that's really important for me. really just having a small community of friends that I can talk about certain situations has been life-saving for me.
Amazing. I commend you for creating that time. I think that's extraordinary. So as you think about this, think about what is your biggest challenge right now. That might be internal, it might be external, it might be at home, it might be at work, it might be about the world, it might be about your community, whatever is going on. Just think about what that is right now. And then I want you to also think about kind of the story that you're telling yourself about this challenge. Like, what are you making it mean? Think about some of the narrative that you have around it. And then what would be possible if this challenge just went away? What would that create? So for anyone listening now or later, if you want to even turn this recording off and take some time to answer these questions first, I think that would, consider this your invitation to do so. So I'm going to stop the share for a second. And so let's talk about this. So what came up? Anybody want to share their current challenges? One current challenge that's present for you? You can feel free to unmute yourself if you're willing to share.
Or write on the chat.
Or write in the chat. Yeah. Oops. Yep. Right in the chat. Okay. All right. I will go on. First, I want to talk to you first about kind of the story part of this. All right. So, I mean, did everyone have a challenge that they're currently experiencing? Yes. Okay. All right. I see the yes, absolutely. Yes. Okay. So I want to first kind of share the inspiration for this whole workshop. I was at one of my dear friends, my oldest childhood friends, her father very unfortunately passed away. And I actually didn't know her father very well. I've known her since I was 7 years old, but I know her because she used to visit her grandparents in the summer, and they lived in my hometown, and her parents were divorced. So I only really knew her mother. So I went to the funeral, and I really, I got to know some aspects about her father. And one of his best friends stood up and was talking about him. And he said, the thing I'm going to miss most about Peter is that after a day of skiing or a day of whatever, and we'd all get together and somebody would inevitably tell a story, and Peter would kind of lean back and go, that story is like a 6. And he would start to rate the stories of his friends. And I was like, that is brilliant. So I, being the loving coach that I am, whenever my clients started to tell me these stories that kind of sucked, I was like, that story is like a 2. That story is terrible. That's a terrible story. Why are you telling yourself that story? Right. But we all do that, right? Inevitably, we are all contributing often to different levels of different stories. Sometimes we tell ourselves these victim stories. Sometimes there are real victim stories, and I'm not talking about those stories. Sometimes, but there are sometimes where we're taking things personally. We're making assumptions. We are actually doing the opposite of the 4 agreements. If you're all familiar with the 4 agreements, right? It's like, be impeccable with your word. Don't make assumptions. Don't take anything personally, and always do your best. And so it's easy to feel like things are happening to us And sometimes they are, and sometimes we are making up a story about it, right? So the intent here really is to, or the real honest to God truth is that our stories in many ways also can dictate our experience. So that's the thing that we want to just be mindful and really kind of name, so that if there is an opportunity for us to change anything, we obviously cannot do that without naming it, as we well know, right? So think about, if you could, and you're welcome to just put this in the chat or the comments, like what are some of those challenges that your experiences and the story that you might, maybe, or even just the story that you're saying. So I'll give you some examples. Like, you might be telling yourself a story, whether you're conscious of it or not, that I'm overwhelmed. Anybody feel like that's part of the story? I'm overwhelmed. Another way that we sometimes talk about it is, I don't have enough time. Anybody? Yes. I'm stressed, right? We already had some of that in our initial check-in about how we were feeling and where we were. We have, I can't prioritize. Anybody like that? Like, things, there's so much going on, I don't even know where to begin. Sometimes it's, I have to do it all myself, might be a story that you tell yourself. Or doing more is doing better, like a good American. I'm gonna work through a riot, and damn it, that will make me somehow more valuable and good. That's a story. Yes. So, this is where we get to own, though, our own personal responsibility as a powerful tool for positive change. Okay. And again, responsibility, when I say it here, I mean the ability to respond. This is not about like an obligation or deep responsibility, like you're responsible for it. It's not a blame or shame or put down or extra added pressure. It is actually, my intention here is to share this word and talk about it in that way, that it's a way to actually take more power over your circumstance and own thy value and ability to respond in a whole new and up-leveled way. So I'm going to share my screen again. And now, if you have a piece of paper, I would love you to make this tea. And this is the first step in changing in the challenge. Okay. So I want you to think about it like this. So whatever you wrote down in the reflection, you can write down here on this side, on the left side of a piece of paper. My old story around my challenge is, I can't or I don't because. And you're welcome to use any of the ones that I said. It could be, I'm overwhelmed, I don't have enough time, I'm stressed, I can't prioritize, I have to do it myself, doing more is doing better. Whatever these stories are that you've been telling yourself, just jot a few of them down here. And if you have any others that come up for you that you want to share as you're doing so, please unmute yourself and share. I'm alone. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yep. And inside of that, is it also, I'm alone, and so like, and because I'm alone, what happens? Or what's another layer of that story? Because there's the, I'm alone, so nobody can, there's like the lone wolf story too, right? Like, I have to do it all by myself because no one can do it better, which also is like, I would think within that story, it's also control. It's also, there's a lack of trust, right? And so, but I think the alone story has multiple levels. I spread myself too thin. Yep. No one can help me. Great. These are great stories. I'm not qualified. Yep. And the question is like, how are these, like, what's the impact of this story, right? Like this whole thing that we're talking about, the title of this, is all about how to create more ease, impact, joy, and freedom, right? But what are we, when we're choosing to live in these stories? I'm not qualified, I'm alone, I spread myself too thin. What are we creating, right? More of that we're creating, right? It's like Kampalia, is that how I say your name?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So when you're talking about like what's your experience in the story of I'm alone and no one can help me, do you have do you feel like more of that happens?
I feel it's fear, internal fear, not necessarily. Yeah, I think it's internal fear of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I just I don't feel like there's enough support.
You don't feel like there's enough support, and then is the experience that you don't have enough support?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
Yeah.
it's like both. It's like what creates what? Is it true you don't have enough support and then you believe that, or do you believe it and then that kind of perpetuates?
Mm,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I do. I
Mhm.
believe I don't have enough support.
Right.
Is the first statement.
Okay. So that's good information. And then it is just an inquiry to say, is that where I started, or did I believe that and then that transpired? It's just an inquiry, just something to ask. I don't have an answer, but
Mhm.
it's just something to be curious about. And
Okay.
someone's at my door. Thank you. My doorman comes up and brings me packages because I don't leave my house. Eridania, I'm not cultured enough. That story sucks, right? That's like a 2. That's a terrible story, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. That's a good example. Good example, right? These stories suck. These are terrible stories, right? There's no reason that we need to be alone or feel that you're unqualified or not cultured enough, right? So, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Okay. So the question I have now is, on a scale of when you're writing out all those stories, tell me on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low and 5 being high, what's your energy level after talking about your old story? And you can share that or write that in the chat. How would you identify your energy level after writing this old story about what you can't do or what you don't do? Or it's a 1, Sonia, right? And Sonia, can I ask, what does a 1 mean to you?
I'm just drained. Like I don't have an I don't have an avenue. It's almost like I don't have an idea of what to do. Like I'm fogged. That's how it feels like.
Yeah, right.
But not to jump ahead, but it's like I could snap out of it because I it's like, if I shut my mind in my head, I'll figure it out.
Right.
You're
But
far.
but how often are we hijacked by these stories, right? And then, so is anyone else having an experience of, the energy level around these stories? Anyone else want to share a number between 1 to 5 when you think about being alone or spread too thin, or or not the judgment of not being cultured enough? Like, how does that land for you energetically? A 2 for Eridania. Your strategy is not working, obviously. The belief used to be that you weren't good enough. Yeah. Okay, so it shifted from not good enough to not cultured enough, or it's all in the same realm.
It's all the same.
Yeah,
It's just the belief that that I'm not good enough shifted to maybe just a matter of changing my strategy. I suck with my strategy. I
well,
need
I
support with
understand. But the I think that not good enough is a definitely a story that it's definitely a story that so many of us share, right? It's like Brene Brown will say it's the core shame of all of us, of like the human condition is not good enough, which is but just think about that as a core shame, as like the weight of that for all of us, right? So again, I would say that to me that story is a one, if not a negative 28,000, right? Um yeah, and Emily feeling defeated, and Ellen, um you think the collective you energy is higher since we name it? Is that what you mean? Or you don't just mean me?
Yeah, no, that once you sort of identify it, that's probably the first step
Yeah,
to trying to fix it.
yeah,
So maybe
right,
you just feel a little energized that you've called it something.
yeah, or yeah, and you can, right, and this is also just about you, so you can, if that's your experience, that's awesome, right? So yes, naming it is quite freeing in some way, right? Because then then we're like naming, um we're just we're naming the elephant in the room. We're naming something that now, once we name it, we can tame it, we can reframe it, we can change it, right? But it's not, because this energy is energy, and it's not going to transform unless we are acknowledging what the issue is. It's kind of like, I would say that most of what's going on in the world right now, it's like, this is not new, but it's so out in the open that those, those of us who maybe didn't name it in the past don't really have a choice but to, well, I say don't have a choice as being the queen of choice. We do have a choice, because some people are clearly still not naming it. And we have a choice to name it, which now is like, it's hard to not see what's going on. And now we really have a choice. Now there's really an opportunity for personal responsibility about, how am I as a white woman going to respond to the world and its, and the just kind of how overt everything is. Like, I am choosing to look to, and find where my fingerprints are, and do some real work around changing that. And that is a choice, right? Some people are making different choices, and there is an opportunity in all the ways to make these choices. So anyway, so okay, so with that, everybody have their old story written. So yeah, we can move forward. Good. Any other, articulating something can feel like a relief. Yeah. Emily, you want to say more about that?
Sure. I feel like when you put something into words or name something, it you're able to sort of lessen its power over you and move forward. It's kind of like the first step in sort of letting go of something.
Yeah. Or transforming something.
Mhm.
Right? Because the truth is, like, the energy is the energy is the energy is the energy. That's not going to die. It's just going to transform. It can transform. It has the possibility to transform. And that's where choice comes in. Okay. So anybody else have any insights or thoughts that they want to share before I move on about the old story, or any themes or anything else that came up for them?
I do.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with what Emily said. I feel like sometimes we experience things and they're just feelings in the moment, you know? But when we take some time to reflect and we acknowledge it and then we name it, then you can actually it creates a certain level of awareness. And that's when you can actually create a plan and then work towards implementing that plan to change I guess, change the story in a sense.
Yeah.
So I've experienced that when it came to my finances, because that was like a huge challenge. That was a huge challenge, and it was a situation where it's just like, man, I'm broke. I don't like being broke, but I had to like lay everything out. I was like, all right, well, where's my money actually going? And then I was able to see like, all right, well, I'm not broke. I'm just mismanaging some of my funds. So it creates a certain level of awareness and acknowledgement, I would say.
Yeah. And then choice to be responsible and manage your money in a different way, and not own or tell yourself a story that you're broke, right? Because that's an I am statement. That can be like an affirmation.
Right. So now I'm experiencing a cash flow problem.
Don't say not a problem. Is
challenge,
it a
issue.
Is it a, oh, okay. You're saying that for real, that's what's happening, or that's how you're.
No, that's it's like stages. It's like stages.
Got it.
So I'm no longer in that stage, thank God.
Okay, great. Yes, or blame someone else, right? It's easier to blame someone else for where you are too. Absolutely. All right, you guys, this is awesome. So now let's change some of this stuff up, right? So now on the right side of the T, you are going to we're going to go there, right? The new story or choices are, so you now choose to, I now choose to. So I want you to think about it like this. Now that you've named the challenges, right? We can use that to inform the choices that you now want to make. So this is what you put in the right column. So this is where you get to claim the story that you want to lead with and expand. And so, for instance, if your old story was, I don't have enough time, then you get to change that to, I now choose to empower myself to align with my, I now choose to empower myself and create pockets in my schedule that are expansive, or, or if the old story was, I'm overwhelmed, overwhelm is future negative fantasizing, right? So it's about thinking about the future, but it already sucks. So if you're going to fantasize about the future, let's make it lovely and awesome, right? So if your old story was, I'm overwhelmed, or I can't do this because I'm overwhelmed, or I don't do it because I'm overwhelmed, then maybe now it's, I choose to be present and take one step at a time, right? If the old story is, I'm alone, then I want you to really get some clarity around, like, is that really true? And if so, what do you want to choose now if you don't want to be alone, right? I now choose to consciously reach out and create community, something like that, right? So the opportunity here, though, is to use the information that you have written down in the old story or challenges to inform the new story and the choice. Make sense? Any questions on that? Anyone want to give me a quick example of what they might be choosing?
Is it okay to unmute?
Yes, please.
So for this particular situation where I was feeling a lot of the fear and alone, I put, I now choose increased self-confidence. And I now choose liberation.
And what is that? What does that bring up for you when you say that? What's the experience of saying that out loud?
Letting go of the expectations I had in regards to what's happening with this situation. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. How does that feel as a new story and a choice?
Freeing.
Awesome. I mean, liberation, like, I hope that is freeing. That's a good choice. Right, which is interesting, right? Because the old story was the being alone was actually, it was steeped in fear, right? Fear, by the way, though legitimate in many ways, and there is the gift of fear and all that stuff, but sometimes it's also false evidence appearing real. Have you heard of that? Like that? False evidence appearing real. So it's like that's a good indicator. That's a good question to also get curious about when we are telling ourselves an old story. Like, I can't reach out because I'm scared. Is that fear? I'm alone and and I'm fearful about that. But is it really true, right? Like, it's like we get to challenge ourselves about what's really true in those old stories, and to really free ourselves to choose. And you know what? If you want to choose the old story, do it. Right? I'm not saying, like, obviously I don't want you to feel like you're alone or feel like you're overwhelmed, but if it's there and you just want to be in your stuff, at least choose it. Because if you're consciously choosing even the stuff that's not fabulous, there is something within that suddenly goes, well, do I really want to be choosing? Like, I'll be honest with you, the gym is a thing of the past, of course, but exercise is still present, right? So sometimes I very consciously choose not to exercise. And that's also freeing. And that actually allows me to take more personal responsibility about my choice there, right? So I kind of am known, if you listen to my podcast, I'm oh, I keep doing this. I say, whether you do it or don't do it, choose it, right? Because it's all about, I just want you to feel empowered with your choices, okay? So let's come back to the news stories. So what's some news stories you guys have here? What's some transformations? How did you change your challenge to choice in this new story? Anyone want to share? Or let me ask you this, on a scale of 1 to 5, again, 1 being low and 5 being high, what's your energy level after talking about the news stories? After writing the news story? And you can write that in the chat, or you can share it out loud. 5, 7, on a scale of 1 to 5, a 7, Sonia. 8. Now we're all one-upping each other. I love it. That's great. I love it. Okay, tell me more about this. What is the actual shift for you? What's the difference? So we got freedom, right? So free is just like, it's like a weight is lifted in some way. Yeah. So that feels so much better. And do you feel like, Kampalia, do you feel like it's the choice that really helped with that? Like the choice to let go of the outcome, the choice to let go of having control over the other? Do you think that was part of it?
Yeah, just letting go of expectations.
Yeah. But, but again, I think bringing a consciousness of the choice to do so is the thing that can keep you free, right? Because the truth is, like, look, let's be honest, this is a dance. We are always going to be hijacked by our limiting thoughts, by our challenges, by the stuff that's not working, right? And we get to have a choice. And sometimes, again, that choice is like, I'm going to choose to be in my shit, right? Because I can't, because I don't have the capacity right now to not be. Or I am choosing to go through my stuff because I am honoring myself to get it out of my system, but I cannot ignore it or bypass it. I must experience it. I am choosing to experience my experience, and then I will make a different choice, right? But one choice at a time, and whatever that is perfect. It really is. So this is not about bypassing feelings. This is not about bypassing experiences. This is about being honest with yourself and bringing awareness to what is here now and the story that you're telling yourself. And if it's possible for you to shift that story from like a 1 to a 10, then by all means do it. And if it's not, just be conscious of it and at least choose the story that's a 1. thoughts, feelings, experiences? All right.
think
Oh,
it
yeah.
I think it deserves some reflection just to really breathe that in, that new idea that there is power in choosing whether you do it or not do it. Like you said, if I don't go to the gym and I would prefer going to the gym X number of days per week, but I don't, I chose not to. And there is power in that. And to choose to feel your emotions, even though they may be uncomfortable, but to make that choice, you know what? I want to heal. I choose to feel this uncomfortable emotion. I choose to perhaps reach out for support, but every single second we are choosing, even when we forget. So I think it deserves a reminder somehow. Like I don't know if I'm gonna get a bracelet or write it, write a note to myself, but there is power in every experience.
Yep. That permission to choose is really intended to be like, you know, I loved those permission slips when I was little, right? Did anyone grow up in the land of like permit, like the pink permission slips when we're little? I mean, I'm really dating myself, but like I think that if we were to give ourselves a permission slip, you know, what's possible? You know, like what kind of space are we creating if we're just giving ourselves permission? I think about it as like we are, it's like not allow, it's like I have an inner rebel, which I anyone with me, anyone have like an inner part of them that's like even the gym idea is like, I don't want to go to the gym. Well, I don't want to, well, I don't want to go to the gym. Well, I want to, you know, well, you have to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. You know, if we take the have to out of it and it's, I'm choosing not to go to the gym, the rebel doesn't have a job anymore. Right? It's like, oh, you know, it doesn't know what to do. So the choice kind of, it frees us up. And then I find that once I make a choice sometimes not to exercise, then I will choose to exercise. If I give myself permission to eat a bag of chips, I sometimes choose not to. But it's kind of like that, you know, in the choice, it's like, you know, the new way of parenting, right? I'm not a parent, but I know that like kids are now given choices. You can have this one or this one, right? And so then they feel like they have a little more control, I guess. I can't really speak to the children thing. I don't know. You can ignore me. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is this. I want to do a fun little letting go, speaking of. So if you would take your piece of paper and fold it in half and rip it down the middle so that it is equal, so that on one side you have the old story and on the other side you have the new story. And if everybody would hold up their old story in their hand while we do this, and you can keep yourselves on mute as you do this, but I would love it if you would just repeat after me, holding up the old story and the challenges and keeping your new story somewhere safe. I want you can repeat after me out loud to yourself or, you know, out loud but you're on mute. Here we go. Ready? I want you to say, thank you, challenges, for showing me the story I no longer choose to tell myself. Thank you, challenges. I feel like Jimmy Fallon never do this. Thank you, challenges, for helping me to see the places where I've been holding myself back, the ways in which I've been keeping myself small, unhappy, unhealthy. I'm grateful for this awareness and for this opportunity to take personal responsibility for my choices, unconscious and conscious. And with this, I now choose to release and let go of these challenges, of this story of this old story, of this small story that no longer serves me or others, or reflects the truth of who I am or what I'm capable of creating. I now choose my new story. And so it is. Rip that up and let it go and put it somewhere where you can, like lovingly really throw it away at some point after this conversation. And now type in one word into the chat or get off of mute and tell me, how do you feel at this moment? What's one word to describe how that just felt to rip up that old story? Freedom, empowering, powerful. Yes. Yes. Everyone agree with that stuff? Like there's a shift energetically. Yeah. Empowered. So I want you to just really be mindful, right? It's a very simple exercise that had an impact even in your energy shift in space, creating some space in mind, body, spirit, right? And now you get to continue to choose. I would encourage you to take that news story and use it as a launch point for, use it as a launch point to write a bigger story about the new choices that you're making, and then put it somewhere where you can see it and be with it and continue to stay aligned with it. And I think that may be all we have time for at the moment, but this is what I would love for you to continue to just play with and expand and read every day. And also I have on my website, which is Stef Ziev, and Eridania can put it in there, stefziev.com. I have a permission to choose manifesto, which will also help inspire you. And I encourage you to go there and grab it. It's free and it's fun and it's awesome. And you can create your own as well, but it will help to keep you aligned with this change, changing your challenge to choice and creating more of the things that you want, as opposed to the things that you no longer need or no longer serve you or others. So I will end us there so that we have a few minutes for Q&A, but thank you guys so much for your participation and for showing up. I'm really grateful.
Thank you so much, Steph. So I have shared on the chat, Steph website is stefziev.com. So that's STEFZIEV.com. If you go to our website, you will be able to book a 30 minutes complimentary coaching session with her. So please, why not? Do it. As well as you will be able to download the manifesto that she just spoke about. Anyone has any questions, feel free to write it on the chat here or on Facebook Live. We're reading both chats.
I just want to say thank you to Steph. I think, this conversation, we could talk ourselves out of it, right? Because on a day-to-day, I was thinking this is like a yo-yo. One moment I'm up, one moment I'm down. One moment I'm up, one moment I'm down. And could you give us a little bit of tips on how to continue to be more, like, for example, when we practice something, right? When we practice it, we have less of the what we don't want and more of what we do want. So how could we get into what kind of tips you could leave us with?
Yeah. Well, certainly, I think that even just that very simple T, right? It's like just to be mindful about, if you are mindful about a meeting that you have to go into, or a conversation you're about to have, or any challenge that's really up for you, even about what's going on in the world or what's going on in your own world, you can use this as a clearing and as a way to kind of shift the energy. So if you're consistently writing down and becoming aware of the story that is going on, often unconsciously, but to make it conscious and put it in that left lane, and then use that to inform the choices that you now would like to make. This is a practice, it's not perfection, right? So be in the practice and be in the progress. There's no end game, right? This is just a tool. The other thing I would say is that, another big tenet of mine is that I talk about instead of there being a big dining room table with all your friends and family around it, I think about it as a dining room table within us, right? And so often we have all these different parts of us around the table, and they include everything that you guys have shared today, right? They include everything from hungry, exhausted, overwhelmed, sensitive, anxious, responsive, reactive, alone, spreading self too thin, not qualified, not enough, right? It also includes all the other stuff that you talked about, which is the empowered and powerful, and freedom, and liberation, and kindness, and love, and happiness, and joy, and all that stuff, right? And the question I always ask is this one, and this is where I'll share the screen again with my very curated picture. But this is the question, right? Who's sitting at the head of your table? And and the symbol of that picture obviously is like, we have all of those parts of us sitting on the table, around the table, and we get to choose what part we want to lead with, right? If happiness is sitting at the head of the table, that's going to author a very different story than if less than, or lack, or alone is sitting at the head of the table. And that's where we get to also be conscious. And this one question, who's sitting at the head of the table, can be something that shifts us out of the old story and into the new story. And really specifically also about, it's also like, if you think about the word, the author, right? The author is the authority. So if you think about it as who's authoring your story, who's sitting at the head of the table, who's the authority that you are choosing consciously or unconsciously to put at the head of the table. And then that's where you get to make another choice. Like maybe it's like, okay, so it's like maybe liberation sitting at the head of the table. Now what's possible, right? Then those choices from that author are going to be very different than if alone is sitting at the head of the table, right? If worthy is sitting at the head of the table versus unworthy, very different stories created throughout the day, very different choices made. So that's where, again, these are tools and practices and things that, you get to put into play. And I have my clients, I ask them, on the iPhone and probably other phones, you can set a label for an alarm, and I have them write in who's sitting at the head of the table, and I have them actually set an alarm throughout the day to interrupt them so that they can get some clarity around what part of them is running the show. Is that helpful, Sonia?
That was fantastic. That was so on point. I totally love the head of the table. Who's at the head of the table right now?
And can I just say, my dream is that every conference, I mean, in the old world, every conference room and now every Zoom, if people would start a conference, like a meeting by acknowledging who they're choosing to put at the head of the table, how different could those meetings be? How different could those results be, right? Because if it's not, because if you think about it, people are walking into those rooms already with stress, anxiety, disempowered, worry, fear, anxiety, that's who's sitting around those tables. And if we're consciously shifting and claiming and choosing who we are being at the head of the table, that can change everything.
Yes.
So
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
thank
So
you guys.
I just want to encourage everyone to please consider accepting Steph's invite to choose freedom, which, as she said it herself, is a get to, a want to, a choose to. And I'm quoting her, whether you do it or don't do it, give yourself permission to choose it. So again, thank you everyone. We do the uplift once a month. So please subscribe to our newsletter so that you can be informed of upcoming events. And we would love to have Stephanie back at some point, and we'll let you know. So please sign up, follow us on social media, and visit Stephanie's website. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for participating so beautifully. That was really helpful. Thank you. Thank you. All of you. I really appreciate it.